Hi, I'm Olivia. This is AV Club, where we talk about horror, lit fic, weird books, whatever I want to talk about. And today I'm doing another installment of book reviews of recent horror releases. Today I have 5 books to talk about, 2 of which I've already done standalone book reviews of. So let's get into it. The first one of those being Futility by Nuzo Onoh. And this was not a winner for me. This is definitely one to watch the full book review because I really tried to be as detailed as possible with my critiques, because I'm sure there's plenty of people who will dislike this book for the wrong reasons, whereas I feel like I disliked it for the right reasons. Opening up my review of that video, I joked that it failed the Bechdel test for whatever it is where women can't talk to each other without thinking about how the other one is fat or something along those lines. Literally every single page of this book is about how fat and obese these women are and how disgusting they are because of it. I hated how this book described women and their relationships to other women. Found it an interesting choice to critique how women think about each other so much, whereas the men were not really evil in this book. This book follows 2 main characters, Chia and Claire. Chia runs a restaurant in Nigeria. She has made a pact with this deity where she sacrifices men to the deity in order to get wishes granted. So her wishes include that she's seen as the most beautiful woman by all men and that her restaurant is successful no matter what. Claire is a British government worker in the visa office. She is a terrible person. She's racist. She has a Nigerian boyfriend that she treats very disposably and undermines all the time. Her boyfriend also has a cousin slash girlfriend that complicates the picture. However, this book definitely wants you to see these characters as unlikable. That is not my issue with this book. I love unlikable characters, and I don't mind that they're evil. However, they are just the amount of evil on page 1 and just the same type as they are every other page in the book. There's no change in the tone and intensity of the book. They don't really grow, they don't do anything interesting, and it is just like so thorough about how disgusting fat women are in this book. And yeah, it's definitely not likable to read, and it's just so repetitive. Like, I don't care if your characters start evil and stay evil, that's fine, because it is kind of a fuck around and find out kind of story. However, the punishment does not fit the crime, because this book also imagines that the greatest punishments for women are being fat or being disabled. That's just the worst thing that could happen to you, is that you could be in a wheelchair, and that means your life is over. So, not really a storyline that I meshed well as I really hated how it treated the queer characters in the story. The 2 queer characters are trans twins. They introduce the characters as trans, they immediately dead name them. They like say their name, then they dead name them in the same sentence. And then it talks about how before they transitioned, they were so good at sports, which is invoking recent turfy arguments against trans people. And then after that paragraph's over, it mentions they're trans one more time, and then they're done. They're like out of the picture. It was just such a bizarre choice, and um, yeah. So this book didn't do anything for me because it the plot didn't go anywhere unexpected. I hated how it talked about characters the whole time. The characters were not interesting, very repetitive. I did not feel like that they either did anything interesting with how evil they were, or that they got appropriately punished for how evil they were. Like, there was just no reason for any of it. It doesn't work as a critique of how society sees fat people. It doesn't work as a critique of British imperialism. I mentioned in my standalone book review that the only character that is given any kind of charitable interpretation is literally Tom Hiddleston. Like, Tom Hiddleston, the actor, is the only person that gets a pass in this, and every other character is like, there's really no point. Prior to disability being a punishment for one of the main characters, there's only one other disabled character in the book, and it infantilizes them so much, even though they clearly do communicate and have friends, etc. That they do have their own life going on, but it treats them like, because they're disabled, that they are just like a blameless lamb unto the world and a sacrifice. Like it's just, I did not like this book. I don't think that it gave what it was trying to give. And if it did give what it was trying to give, then I wasn't taking it. But again, check out that full review for really a uh, thorough look at my critiques of the book. Next, we have The Captive by Kit Burgoyne. This one I thought was fun. I did do a comparison video of this book with Fiend by Amakatsu, which I also talked about in a recent horror book new releases review video, because both of these books follow a demon powered family business. And whereas in Fiend, your viewpoint is inside the family, and this you are in a radicalist leftist resistance group who has kidnapped that demon powered family's daughter, and turns out she's pregnant, and she's very pregnant. She's about to have a baby in the first few pages of being kidnapped. This one worked really well for me, not only just because it's so well written, the characters were interesting. I'd never been put into a premise like this where you were in, I love how it just started in the middle of the action of things and let you sort of sort out for yourself the characters and their relationships to each other, as well as seeing how their relationships change. Because it turns out the daughter that they kidnapped isn't quite so upset that she's kidnapped, that she had her own complaints with her family, and maybe they were really, really evil and not just like normal billionaire capitalist evil, but maybe there's a demon behind all of this. And I think it works so well to really convey how big and evil this demon could be, because we were positioned on the outside of it looking in, and having that distance between it made it seem like it could be so much grander. Whereas in Fiend, it felt like this isn't very powerful because we're in this family and they don't really seem very evil, and could have almost just been like a normal family business thriller. But The Captive goes unexpected places with the characters, the relationships to each other as they evolve, because they have to choose whether to trust this daughter or not, if they still trust each other. And like, what are they going to do about the baby that the daughter just had, who seems like he might actually be the Antichrist, because he is like summoning caterpillars and causing hailstorms and doing really weird stuff. So there's a lot of big set pieces in the story, lots of scenes that seem almost cinematic, that you could just like see it happening in your mind. And I had such a good time with this one. I am interested in reading his literary fiction. Not sure how soon I'll prioritize it, but this was the first thing that I read by the author and was really impressed. Next, I read The Tarot Reader by Finley Turner. This is kind of horror, kind of thriller. Probably should be more sorted into the thriller category if I'm being honest. This book follows two sisters who are working as scam tarot readers that are making their money in the way that their family has for a long time, by scamming people, by telling them that they're cleansing the demons out of their houses. And they're able to do this through various methods of looking them up, of noticing things about them, and doing kind of that quick psychological analysis of what they might be needing from them. But they're just not quite making as much money as they need to. And so one day, one of the girls sees a dog and a missing dog poster, and rather than just calling in the missing dog, they call the owner and were like, hey, I had a psychic vision that I think this is where your dog is, because they already knew where it was. And then they get a lot of press from this. And at the same time, there's a local politician missing, and she calls in a fake thing about where she thinks that he is found, and turns out she was right. And then she's really in a tangled mess of trying to both say, yeah, I really am psychic, but also I'm not suspicious because I knew this. And so they're still just like trying to make money and get by, while also like kind of avoiding all of the trouble that they have gotten themselves into. They're really making a lot of these problems for themselves. My issue with this book is that it skipped over all of the scenes that should be really interesting. Like at one point, they're trying to cause someone to believe that they're haunted over a long period of time. And it's just like, yep. And they made him believe that he haunted their house, rather than like letting you be on the page and doing it to him. Like that should have been way more interesting than a lot of the just conversations and dialogue that was earlier. It just skipped over all the interesting parts of it. Like it didn't know what was interesting about its own story. Um, just way too long for the amount of story that it was. No twist that would surprise you. It didn't really go anywhere that interesting. I thought the tarot stuff would be more interesting, but it's not even very tarot-y, other than she's like scamming people by, you know, reading their tarot at the beginning of the story. So, not very tarot-y, not very thrillery, not very horror-y, but it's fine. It's fine. Very inoffensive, but definitely not one that I would recommend. Next is Girl Dinner by Olivie Blake. Ah, this was so good. This was such a surprise because I am low key, high key, mid key, maybe tired of female cannibalism tropes and how they're written, that they're frequently about this like insatiable hunger that women have to fill this sort of like innate uh, spiritual hole that lives inside of them, and it's all about like consumption and filling yourselves. I would rather not. Like I think that there's something interesting to be said about not doing that, about instead of being about women mm, creating rather than filling. Like I'd rather do you know what I mean? Like it could be women. I want to see women who spit acid and slime. I want to see women who make weird growths. I don't know. Something other than just like consuming, creating something, making something. This one, however, I think was so fun and I thought had some really interesting critiques. I was I had just seen a reel yesterday or something that was like, yeah, I went to college during the whole millennial girl boss feminism, like you go girl, CEO, lean in kind of stuff. And that was horrible, but somehow Gen Z has invented a new type of feminism that's like even worse. And it's about that. We're following two main characters in this story as well. One who is an adjunct professor at a college. Her husband is on a tenure track there. She had previously been on a tenure track somewhere else, but they moved colleges so that her husband could have better job opportunities and really prioritized his career. She has also just had a baby. I think the baby's 16, 18 months old, and she's having a lot of trouble with motherhood, both about feeling like my body isn't mine anymore. What happened to my career, but also I don't want to leave my baby at daycare. This feels horrible. My husband doesn't seem to be having any of these troubles. I thought how she was written was so interesting and so sensitive to the idea of motherhood, the idea of that real feeling of conflict about not knowing where your priorities should be, and that you didn't think you were the kind of woman who could be reduced to just being like, I just want to devote my whole life to this baby and this family, but also I feel horrible when I don't. It was really nuanced and it didn't reduce it to telling you how you should feel whenever you're reading this character and about how she should be doing things, and it wasn't judgmental at all. There's also our other character who is a sorority pledge. She's a sophomore, and sophomores aren't usually pledging to sororities, that's a freshman thing to do. However, there's this incredible sorority on campus that are just known as like the house, the girls, the women. And I love how this was written because you can imagine whatever university, college, sorority you want to for this. Because if you went to college in the US that had sororities, if it had Greek life, then that some of the sororities were on different hierarchies than others. It's something that I experienced secondhand because I lived in the dorms my freshman and sophomore year at LSU, and I had different roommates each year, and they were both sorority girls but different sororities, and I could just see how they both had different relationships with the sororities that they had. One was very weird about it, one was very normal about it, but I kind of experienced Pledge Week secondhand, watching them do this and watching them go through Rush. And you get to see that in this novel. And I love how it wasn't judgmental about this girl wanting to do Rush. I don't think I've seen Greek life really in a book, and definitely in a horror book that wasn't judgmental about the girls and acting like they were just very superficial and that's the only reason they wanted to do this was to like buy friends or whatever. I thought that it was a nuanced take about their relationship with the other girls and why our main character might want it for herself. But there's something weird about the sorority that it is beyond perfect, that all the girls who join it never have a blemish, never have any health problems. They all go on to really great things. And that includes an influencer, a trad wife influencer that our adjunct professor character becomes obsessed with. She knows she shouldn't like it, but she just does for whatever reasons that she just can't stop watching it and gets obsessed with it. And there's much to be said about this ritual that they have at the house, their Monday night dinners, where they eat and eat and eat. And there's something weird about the food and the eating. And yeah, I mean, I already said it's like a female cannibalism story, but it is done so interestingly and isn't so much about the consumption and more so a critique of the types of feminism that tears other women down, self sabotage in progressive spaces. Like it was just really interestingly well done that it created what looked almost like a utopia in this sorority house that, you know, they don't care if all the other characters are queer and or what size they are. You know, like it was just like that kind of utopia and looking at the different generations that they each have their own problems, not talking down about either of them. It doesn't tell you what the right answer is either. I just thought it was very nuanced and also just very interesting and well done. I love all the cast of characters, huge cast of characters, and I felt like they were all believable, delivered, were all standouts. And I'd never read anything by this author before. She also wrote the Atlas Six, which had never appealed to me. In my mind, that and Fourth Wing were like the same thing, but of course they're not. But now I'm interested in reading her other stuff because this book was so well written. Like I was just I loved it. I was really taken aback. I thought it was going to be more of like a fluffy horror, but it was very character driven on top of having this over the top premise. And that is what I really love is whenever we have like an over the top campy premise, but also delivered by having really good writing and great characters. So highly recommend Girl Dinner if that sounds interesting to you at all. And the last one for today is The Hunger We Pass Down by Jin Sookfong Lee. And this one was so good as well. I listened to it on audiobook, and that's the only thing I will say is I loved the narrator, but it does have split timelines. And I do think I would have preferred to read that in text, that it would have been a little bit easier to follow than on audio. So just something to note. I didn't know from the premise that it was going to do that. But this is a very character driven, intergenerational saga with historical horror elements, like real horrors of comfort women in Hong Kong, that is one of the ancestors of the characters that we're now following. We're in a family now where the mother is having some alcohol abuse problems and keeps forgetting big sections of time, feels like she's disappointing her family, disappointing her boyfriend. She's not able to commit to her boyfriend like she wants to because she is just having a hard time. She has this booming diaper business that she ran. She started in order to support her ex-husband, who is now doing much better and so has left the family. And she has a resentful daughter, a son who's very smart at tech stuff. Like there's just like a really beautiful family story in here. Like it feels very, very literary and in how you're following this family. And a lot of the horrors come from like those real historical elements. Also, like the alcohol abuse is, I think, upsetting to read because she feels so at loss of control about it that she doesn't remember drinking that much and she doesn't understand why she's forgetting so much stuff. But then she also has to face down her doppelganger that's causing her to confront how the legacy of trauma in her family has led to the current situation. So yeah, a really beautiful horror, really well written. I do wish I had read it in text. That was really my only drawback in reading it because I thought that it was really strong. So yeah, those are some recent horror releases that I've already read and reviewed. I love doing these. These are like my favorite things to review. So if you have any upcoming horror releases that you're really looking forward to and that you would like me to review, just let me know what your anticipated horror releases are. I've never been so on top of new horror releases, so I'm so happy to be doing this and hopefully helping you figure out what you want to prioritize in new releases. But that's all from me and Daisy today. We will talk to you again soon. But until next time, talk to you later. Bye!